The morning light stretched long across the kitchen tiles, pale and slow, as if it too had just woken up. The clock ticked against the wall, a faint metronome above the quiet hum of the fridge. There was toast on a plate, cooling beside a jar of jam someone forgot to close. She sat at the table, tiny hands folded, eyes moving from the toast to the two chairs that were there, and the one that wasn't. The missing chair made the space feel unbalanced. 3 cups sat on the counter, though only 2 had been used. Where her sister had once sat was now a shallow gap in the rhythm of the morning. Her father had promised breakfast together would feel normal again, but he was already gone for work. He always left early now. Mara hummed while wiping the counter. The sound was soft and careful, the kind you make so it won't travel far. When the girl heard it, she thought of the way her sister used to hum, mid-bite, off-key, but happy. The memory prickled her skin like sunlight through blinds. She took a small bite of toast and asked, almost politely, "Are we keeping that chair in the garage now?" Mara paused. The cloth in her hand stopped circling the counter. "Which chair, sweetheart?" "The third one. The one that used to be next to me." "Oh." Mara turned back to the sink. "It was wobbly. Your dad said he'd fix it." The girl nodded but didn't believe it. Her father wasn't the sort who fixed wooden things. He fixed broken remotes and loose wires, not furniture. The chair had been fine, she remembered. It had a tiny paint mark on the back from the time her sister tried to draw rainbows around the legs. She watched Mara's shoulders move as she scrubbed a plate that was already clean. The woman's brown hair fell forward, a few strands catching light like slender threads of copper. When she finally turned, her smile came slow, too even, as though practiced before a mirror. "Would you like more toast?" The girl shook her head. "No, thank you." She made her voice calm, like she was in school again, rehearsing politeness. What she wanted to ask was why Mara never turned to look down the hallway, the one that led to the small locked door. The door wasn't frightening. It was just wrong. It looked like a normal door, the kind painted white with a round brass knob, but it was always locked, always gleaming a bit cleaner than the rest. Once, late evening, she'd pressed her palm to it. The wood felt slightly warm. She'd whispered her sister's name then, not loudly, just to test if the air in there still knew her. Now, as the fridge hummed, she glanced toward that hallway again. "Is that room still being cleaned?" she asked suddenly. Mara looked up, not following at first. "What room, honey?" "The one that stays closed." Mara blinked, drying her hands too quickly. "Oh, that's just storage. Nothing fun in there." She gave a small laugh that didn't fit the room. "Old boxes. Cleaning. Supplies. Not a place for curiosity." Her tone was kind, but it brushed too fast over the words, like someone covering a stain with paint instead of washing it out. The girl studied her face a long while, searching for something that would open, a sign of truth peeking through. Then she said quietly, "She used to leave her shoes by that door sometimes because they got muddy." Mara froze, hand resting on the towel rack. "Who did, love?" "My sister." A pause stretched thin across the room. The clock ticked 3 more times before Mara answered. "That was months ago, before you came to stay here full time. Why don't we set the table now? Breakfast always feels brighter when things look nice." The girl placed the fork beside her plate, aligning it with care. "I already set it," she said. "It just looks empty." She didn't mean it to sound sharp, but the words hung in the air like cold breath. From outside came the faint rustle of a mail truck passing. The sunlight shifted, golden now, reaching the edge of the missing chair. Dust shined where a body used to sit. Mara moved quietly to the sink again, fingers trembling just once before steadying. "Your father will be home early tonight," she murmured. "Maybe we can all bake something together." The girl nodded again, staring at the missing chair, thinking, not about baking, but about how the air around the locked door seemed to listen. In her chest, small and certain, a thought formed, gentle but stubborn, like a seed pressing upward through soil. That door remembers her, and she would not stop listening until it told her why. The first weeks in the new house unfolded like pages she hadn't meant to turn. Mornings came with the smell of coffee and lemon cleaner instead of cinnamon and giggles. Her father's shoes clicked differently on these floors. Careful, measured, like someone trying not to wake an invisible sleeper. The little girl kept her room tidy now. Mara liked order. Pajamas folded, shoes lined neatly, hair brushed before breakfast. The woman never raised her voice. She didn't need to. Her calm filled every corner. It wrapped itself around the place where the old life used to shout and sing. At first, the girl told herself it wasn't so bad. There were fresh sheets with lavender scent, a small framed picture of her and her sister on the dresser, and soft lamps that blinked warm when you turned them on. But some nights, when the wind pressed against the window and the pipes sighed in the walls, she thought she could hear her sister's laugh, caught in the corners of the house like dust. Her father tried. He worked long hours at the office, but came home early enough some days to help with homework or carry her upstairs on his shoulders. His eyes were softer now, though tired all the time, like someone clutching two feelings at once: hope and apology. When he and Mara cooked together, the kitchen became a quiet duet of clinks and murmurs. The girl watched from the table, small elbows propped on the edge. Her father would lift the lid of a pot. Mara would hand him a spoon. Two adults moving in rhythm without ever bumping into one another. Strangers performing love like a play they'd rehearsed halfway. The first Sunday felt the strangest. Back home, Sundays had been noisy with her sister's energy. There had always been music, paintbrushes, pancakes that stuck to the pan. Here it was board games and careful laughter. Mara suggested card games that involved counting and patience. The girl missed wild things like syrup on the floor or mismatched pajamas. When bedtime came, the new rules followed. Books first, then sleep, no exceptions, Mara would say softly, smiling enough to show she meant kindness, but not negotiation. The girl nodded, crawled into bed, and stared at the ceiling where the shadows looked foreign. Each day brought tiny substitutions. Her lunchbox now had apple slices instead of juice boxes. Her sister used to sneak candy hearts in the corners. Instead of, "See you after school," she now heard, "Make good choices, sweetheart." Words polished like stones, smooth but missing the heat of a hand behind them. Still, there were moments that made her pause. One afternoon, Mara knelt to tie her shoelaces before they left for a grocery errand. Her hands moved gently, patient and sure. For a second, the girl almost reached out to tuck a strand of hair behind Mara's ear, the way she used to do with her sister. But she stopped herself. It felt like mistaking someone else's heartbeat for your own. The house was big enough to lose yourself in. Sunlight followed her down corridors she didn't know, across carpets too pale for muddy shoes. Sometimes she'd stand at the bottom of the stairs and listen. Her father talking softly, Mara answering in low tones. Snatches of words floated down. Adjust. Doctor's advice. She's managing. Phrases that landed heavy before fading into clinking dishes. At dinner one night, Mara placed a serving bowl on the table and said, "This used to be my mother's recipe." She smiled at the girl. "I hope you'll like it." The child nodded, spooning politely. The flavor was fine, creamy and polite too, but her mind wandered to the locked hallway again. Sometimes she thought she heard a vibration there, the faintest hum, as if someone was strumming air behind the wood. When her father asked how school was, she answered, "Good." That word had become her shield. Good covered everything: loneliness, curiosity, doubt. It asked for no follow-up. After dinner, Mara suggested a bedtime story. "What do you like? Adventure? Fairy tales?" "Stories about people who come back," the girl said. Mara hesitated. "Come back from where?" She shrugged. "Wherever they went." That night, Mara read from a storybook about two sisters who found their way through a forest. Her voice was smooth, steady, almost too controlled. When she closed the final page, the girl whispered, "I like the older sister better." "Why's that?" "She didn't give up when everyone said she should." Mara brushed her palm softly against the blanket. "Good night, sweetheart." When she left, the girl turned toward the wall, where the shadow of that missing chair sometimes seemed to linger, faint as breath. She wondered if shadows could travel between rooms. As days moved quietly on, she began noticing small things about Mara that didn't add up. The woman hummed songs that sounded half familiar, unfinished. She wiped the kitchen counter twice, even when it was clean, and once, when a commercial song came on the radio, she turned it off too quickly, pretending not to know the melody. The girl had seen her sister tap her feet to that same tune once, laughing between notes. The feeling of being safe was there. Soft blankets, warm dinners, but it came with a weight, as if safety was a thick coat that kept her from breathing too deep. A week later, while folding laundry beside the couch, she noticed something glinting at Mara's neck. A small silver locket shaped like a teardrop, half hidden by the collar of her sweater. It swung gently as Mara bent to stack towels. The girl's mouth went dry. She remembered that locket, the faint scratch on its side where her sister's fingernail had once pried it open. Inside had been 2 tiny photos, faces pressed together, hers and her sister's. Mara sensed the stare and touched the locket absently, like a habit learned long ago. "That's pretty," the girl said finally. Mara looked up, fingers still on the charm. "Thank you. It was a gift." "From who?" Mara smiled faintly. "A long time ago. Before you moved in." The answer slid across the surface of truth like light over water. Bright, but impossible to hold. That night, the girl lay awake, hearing the faint, persistent ticking of the clock downstairs. In that rhythm, she thought she could almost trace her sister's laugh again, hidden between the beats. Something in this house was still keeping time for the ones who'd left, and she was determined to listen until she understood the tune. Wordlessly, she whispered into the dark, "I think she'd want it back." The room stayed silent, but the locket's memory shimmered behind her eyelids until morning. The rain began in thin lines against the window, steady as the girl's breathing. Afternoon had folded into one of those long waiting hours between school and dinner when everything felt suspended. The house smelled faintly of detergent and the candle Mara always lit on gray days, vanilla and something floral mixed in. She sat at the kitchen table, crayons spread out like spilled treasure. Mara was nearby sorting papers, her quiet movements filling the air the way her sister's chatter used to. The girl pressed the green crayon hard, drawing grass under 3 stick figures, herself, her father, and standing beside them, her sister, hair in the braids she always wore. A 4th figure, Mara, stood just behind, holding a pie. When she finished, she studied it for a moment, then began to add a small window drawn in the corner of the page. Behind the window, she shaded another tiny face. Mara's voice came, gentle but alert. "That's lovely. Is that us?" "Yes," the girl said without looking up. Mara came closer, hands dusted with flour. "And who is the little one in the window?" The question made the girl's chest twist. "She lives here," she said softly. Mara's expression shifted, almost invisible, but there, a flicker of surprise, then careful calm. "Sweetheart, no one lives here except us 3 and your father." The girl's hand paused over the page. "You forgot her." Mara took a slow breath, straightening slightly. "Honey, your sister doesn't live here anymore." Her tone was measured, practiced, each word placed like tiles. She went somewhere safe after the accident. The word accident landed heavy, though no one ever said what kind. It was the drawer that stayed closed in every conversation. The girl traced the outline of her sister's skirt on the paper. "But she laughed in this kitchen." Mara turned away, setting a bowl into the sink. "Sometimes memories feel like they're still happening. It's normal." The child studied the woman's back. "Was she scared?" she asked. A dish clattered too fast against the counter before Mara steadied it. "Why would you think that?" "She used to hum when she was scared. And you hum now." The silence that followed made the rain sound louder. Mara stared down at the soapy water. "You're safe now," she said at last, voice soft as the steam rising around her. "That's what matters." Safety again. Always that word, like a locked latch meant to end the talk. The girl didn't disagree, but she didn't nod either. After a while, Mara wiped her hands and came to stand beside her. "Your colors are beautiful," she murmured. "Maybe we can hang it on the fridge?" "I'm not finished," the girl said. Her eyes stayed on the drawing. She added a small brown line connecting the window to the group in the yard, a rope, maybe, or a path. "She can hear us if this stays open." Mara crouched down to meet her eyes. There was kindness in that face, but worry too, a kind that made her look older. "Sometimes keeping something open isn't good, sweetheart. It lets the hurt come through." The girl looked up, voice thin but steady. "Only if you're afraid of what's calling." Mara opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it. She stood slowly, resting a hand on the chair back before walking to the cabinet. "Time for a snack. Apple or banana?" "Neither," the girl whispered. But Mara was already slicing fruit. Outside, the sky dimmed to slate. The glass panes shivered as the first roll of thunder passed. The girl gathered her crayons, sliding them neatly into the tin box labeled with both sisters' initials, faded but still readable. When Mara turned her back, she folded her drawing carefully, creasing along the edges to make it small enough to hide. Her heart thumped in her ears, louder than the storm starting outside. Down the hall waited that locked door. It had stood for weeks without sound, the smooth brass knob polished by adult hands. She had watched Mara dust it, never open it, always touch it lightly, like something alive on the other side. Dinner bells would ring soon, Mara's small silver one that meant, "Wash up." The girl knew she had minutes before the clatter of plates began. She crept quietly past the kitchen, the soles of her socks muffling every step. The hall smelled faintly of lemon polish. Each framed photo caught a flash of the low light, a row of smiling faces. Except none showed her sister. Only older pictures now, neat and consistent, like a story rewritten. When she reached the door, the air felt different, warmer, as if the house were exhaling. The knob didn't turn, that part she expected. But the tiny space under the threshold glowed faintly, shadows moving with the rhythm of something breathing on the other side. Her hand shook a little as she crouched. She unfolded the drawing and slid it under the crack. The paper scraped softly against the wood. For a second, she imagined it catching on a shoe being pulled in. She whispered, "It's us, in case you forgot what colors we were." Behind her, the floor creaked. She froze. Just the house, she thought. But the sound carried the same timing as someone shifting weight from one foot to another. Her pulse pounded against her fingertips. She waited, facing the door, hoping it might whisper back, but nothing came, only the hum of rain on the roof and the steady ticking of that unseen clock again. She turned and made her way back to the kitchen, her palms damp, her heartbeat slower now. Mara was there, stacking plates. The woman smiled too brightly. "All clean hands, I hope." "Yes," the girl answered, voice even. She took her seat, picked up her fork, but her eyes drifted down the hall once more. Somewhere behind that door she imagined her drawing lying on the floor, its crayon faces staring up, waiting for light. And though she couldn't prove it, she felt certain that room was breathing with her now. Slow, patient, secret. The rain passed, leaving the world rinsed clean, but the house stayed hushed. By night, it seemed even bigger, each sound stretching longer before fading into quiet. The girl lay in bed, half asleep, when she heard it first. A faint shuffle from down the hallway. Not loud. More like the brush of a sleeve or a sigh pressed through walls. She sat up. The ceiling glowed with the soft amber of her nightlight. Mara and her father's room was downstairs. She could hear the distant hum of the television. Whatever sound that was, hadn't come from them. Pulling the blanket tighter, she listened. There it was again, a whisper of movement just beyond the locked door. She counted the seconds between sounds. 4, 5. Then another soft thump like something being set gently on the floor. Her breath caught. She swung her legs off the bed and slipped her feet into her slippers. The carpet felt cool beneath her toes. Each step down the hall brought the door closer, and, with it, a faint scent she hadn't noticed before. Soap the kind her sister used to love, mixed with something metallic, like keys. The knob didn't rattle when she tried it. It was too firm. She laid her ear against the wood. Inside, something scraped, a chair leg maybe, or a hand dragging lightly across a table. She pressed harder and whispered, "Are you there?" The words came out brittle. Behind her, a floorboard gave a sudden sigh. "Sweetheart?" She whirled around. Mara stood at the end of the hallway, her robe wrapped tight, hair loose around her shoulders. The light from the kitchen haloed her frame, leaving her face in half shadow. "It's late," Mara said, voice gentle but edged with worry. "Why aren't you in bed?" "I heard something." The girl pointed. "From inside." Mara's eyes flicked to the door. She held her expression still for a beat too long, then walked forward, the faint rhythm of her slippers marking each step. She crouched beside the girl. "Houses make odd sounds. Wood settles, pipes, sigh. It's nothing to be afraid of." "It wasn't the house," the girl murmured. "It was someone." Mara looked at her carefully, then reached up and brushed a strand of hair from the child's cheek. "Some doors aren't for children. Do you understand?" The girl nodded, though confusion pressed heavy in her chest. The woman's tone wasn't scolding. It was protective, almost pleading. Mara placed a kiss on her temple and guided her gently back toward the bedroom. "Let the night keep its quiet secrets. Morning is when true things speak." But as she tucked the blanket back around her, the girl noticed Mara's hands were trembling. By the next morning, the air in the hallway smelled faintly of bleach. The doorknob shone brighter, as if freshly polished. The girl brushed her fingertips against it, then pulled away fast, the metal too cold. At breakfast, her father sipped his coffee, eyes bleary. "You look tired, kiddo," he said. "Bad dreams." She hesitated. "I heard noises last night." Before he could reply, Mara slid a plate of toast between them. "Just rain and wind," she said quickly. "I checked everything." Her father nodded absently. "She's right. Old houses talk at night." He didn't look up long enough to see the doubt in his daughter's face. She noticed how he leaned slightly toward Mara. Whenever he spoke, like a plant seeking warmth, the realization ached deeper than fear. It was the ache of someone whose questions had no space left to grow. All day, she kept noticing traces of what she thought she'd heard. A cup on the side table half full of water, though no one drank from it. A folded blanket lying across the bottom stair, still warm when she touched it. When she asked Mara, the woman smiled lightly. Too lightly. "I probably left it there when I was cleaning late," she said. But later that night, as the moon slipped through moving clouds, the same soft rhythm returned. Tap. Pause. Whisper. Tap. She counted again, waiting for patterns, like in a rhyme game she and her sister once played. It matched the beat of their old lullaby, the one her father couldn't bear to sing anymore. Fear and curiosity twisted together inside her. She climbed from bed, holding her breath. Each shadow along the wall looked alive. The house gave a slow sigh when she reached the door again. This time soft music seeped through. A music box tune, faint but unmistakable. Her heart thudded. That box had been her sister's, a gift from their grandmother. It had broken months ago, cracked during the move. Yet here it was, playing through wood and memory. She whispered her sister's name. The melody stopped. Before she could run, a hand touched her shoulder. She spun, eyes wide, breath shivering. Mara stood close, face pale in the low light. "You mustn't," she said quietly. "It isn't what you think." "Then tell me," the girl whispered. "Please." Mara's eyes darted toward the door, then back to the child. "Some truths are delicate. They bruise when spoken too soon." Her tone quivered, the words almost breaking. She knelt, lowering her gaze until they were level. "What matters most is that you're safe." The girl wanted to protest. That safety seemed to cost too many answers, but the weight in Mara's voice stopped her. There was something like sorrow behind those eyes, not danger. She stepped back reluctantly, allowing Mara to guide her once more toward her room. As the sheets were drawn around her, she caught the faint scent of that same soap on the woman's sleeve. Mara lingered a moment in the doorway before whispering, "Good night, little one," and closing it softly. The music never returned that night, but the silence afterward felt alive, thick enough to carry a heartbeat. Lying awake, the girl remembered the way Mara's hand had trembled, the way her eyes had darted toward the locked room. She mouthed the words she hadn't dared to say aloud. Safety isn't the same as truth. Downstairs, a door latched. Footsteps. Then the faint scrape again. One final echo threading through the walls until the whole house seemed to listen with her. Morning light carried the smell of roasted coffee and soap through the kitchen, soft like an apology. The girl sat at the table again. Legs, swinging just above the floor. The missing chair still stood absent beside her. Its absence had learned to make itself invisible. Mara moved between sink and stove, sleeves rolled, humming without realizing. The rhythm was the same tune the girl once heard through the locked door. Slow, uneven, nearly tender. The girl watched her quietly, tracing circles on the condensation of her glass. Her father's chair was empty. He had left early again. The hunger in her stomach wasn't for food, but for understanding. She cleared her throat. Mara? The answer floated out with a cloud of steam as Mara lifted the kettle from the stove. Did you see my sister before she left? The words landed like small stones on polished wood, soft but undeniable. Mara's hand slowed. Steam curled around her face before she answered. Your sister? You mean the day she went away? Yes. The girl's grip tightened around the edge of the table. You were here, weren't you? Mara turned, setting the kettle down gently. I was. Her voice faltered once, then steadied. There was a lot happening then. Your father was hurting. We all were. The girl waited. The clock ticked 3 beats, each sounded louder than before. So you saw her, she said finally. Mara nodded slowly. I did, sweetheart. I said goodbye. The girl's eyes searched the woman's face. Where did she go? You said she went somewhere safe. She did. Mara's hands fluttered uselessly at her sides, then found a dish towel to fold. After the accident, she needed more help than your father could manage here. The doctors recommended a care center, someplace quiet, with nurses. The word nurses felt foreign in that cheerful kitchen, like a guest refusing to leave. The girl blinked against the sudden sting behind her eyes. A care center, she repeated, tasting the phrase. Far away? Not too far. Mara forced a smile that wavered midway. They said she'd come home when she got stronger. The girl looked down at the wood grain. She could have gotten stronger here. We had her blanket. Her pillows still smell like her hair. Mara's voice shrank. Sometimes homes aren't strong enough for all the healing someone needs. That doesn't sound right, the girl said softly, then added, You said 2 weeks ago that safety keeps away the hurt. But if safety means sending people away, is it worth it? The towel in Mara's hand sagged. She sank into the nearest chair, finally meeting the child's gaze. You ask big questions, she whispered. I have big feelings, the girl replied. Mara gave a fragile smile, one corner tilting up, the other trembling. You're like your father, always chasing answers until your heart wears thin. She looked at her own hands resting on the table. Tiny scars crossed the knuckles, half hidden under soap's dryness. The truth's messy. It doesn't always fit inside what's safe. The girl studied the woman's face carefully. When did she get hurt? Mara hesitated. It was raining. There was glass. Your father called me after. He didn't want you to see her right away. He thought if you didn't, the memory would fade gentler. It didn't, the girl said. Mara inhaled sharply, a sound closer to a gasp than breath. I know. And I'm sorry. Her eyes filled, but she blinked them clear before they could spill. We thought protecting you meant keeping things soft. Maybe it only made them strange. The girl leaned forward, voice small. I just wanted to remember her right. Nobody talks about her real. Not Daddy, not you. Mara's shoulders slumped, as though she'd been holding a secret above her head for too long. Your father asked me not to. He believed silence was mercy. The clock clicked behind them again, an impatient heartbeat. The girl reached toward Mara's wrist. You could tell me anyway. Mara looked at the child's pale fingers against her own. You shouldn't have to carry grown-up sorrow. I already do. Something broke quietly inside that line. The air stilled. Even the kettle stopped hissing. Mara pressed her lips together, hands trembling as she removed the locket from around her neck. The chain caught briefly in her hair before falling free. She set it on the table between them. I kept this because she asked me to. The girl blinked. You talked to her? Mara nodded faintly. She was frightened that day, more for you than for herself. I promised her I'd look after you until she was ready to come home. Then why didn't you tell me that? I was afraid you'd think she'd been hidden. The girl's voice dropped lower. Was she? Mara's gaze darted to the hallway, then back. No, she was healing, she said, but even she seemed unsure. Sometimes people need quiet to find their way out of the dark. The child lifted the locket, thumb tracing the scratch along its edge. It opened with a soft snap. Inside sat the two faded faces, hers and her sister's, barely visible behind a film of age. Her throat tightened until words rasped out again. You still wear her picture. Mara's cheeks flushed. I wanted to remember both of you when the house felt too quiet. The girl looked away, to the window where sun pooled against the sink. She'd like that, but she'd also want you to tell the truth. Mara's tears came then, silent at first, slipping down the line of her jaw. The truth is, I tried, she whispered. I tried so hard to be good enough for your father, for you, for the ghost of her laughter that fills every room. She covered her mouth, shaking once. But some days I don't even know if I belong in a story that started before I arrived. The girl didn't move closer, only watched softly. You hum her song, she said. Mara gave a broken laugh. I didn't realize I did. I think she hears it. That simple sentence made Mara's shoulders tremble again. She reached out, brushing the back of the girl's hand. Do you blame me? I think you're scared, the girl said after a moment, like she was before she asked for me when the thunder came. Mara's lips parted, but no words followed. She stood instead, crossing to the sink, running cold water as if to steady herself. You should finish your breakfast. Your father will be home soon. I'm not hungry. The reply hung quiet, respectful, but final. The toast cooled, untouched. Sunlight glinted on the locket between them. Both stared at it. The proof of a promise neither quite understood, yet both were bound by. When Mara finally spoke again, her voice was roughened, stripped of rehearsed calm. Maybe one day, when she's stronger, we'll open the door together. The girl whispered, It's already waiting. Mara turned, eyes red, a faint, rueful smile tugging at her mouth. You sound just like her. The girl picked up the locket, folded Mara's fingers around it, and said quietly, Then maybe you don't need to be so afraid. The kettle clicked as it cooled. Neither of them moved for a long time, just two figures breathing in a kitchen filled with steam, guilt, and a small, unexpected tenderness that felt almost like forgiveness. The afternoon air hung still, the kind that made every small sound seem louder. The washing machine hummed in the back room, a low, steady rhythm. The girl stood on her tiptoes beside the laundry basket, helping Mara sort towels from shirts. The scent of detergent floated up, sharp and clean. You fold the small ones, Mara said kindly, placing a pile in her hands. You're good at corners. The girl nodded. She liked folding. It was neat, predictable, unlike the slippery questions she carried inside. She pressed her fingertips along each edge, smoothing them out until the fabric lay flat. As she reached for another cloth, her hand brushed against the side of the washer. Something rough caught her skin. She leaned closer. There, wedged between the machine and the wall, was a small piece of paper folded many times over, edges smudged gray. She tugged it free with care. Mara had stepped into the pantry for a moment. Only the rumble of the washer filled the space. The fold resisted, then opened slowly. Her breath hitched. The handwriting sprawled across the page was uneven, but familiar. Curved letters, loops full of energy. Her sister's. Still here. the note said. Don't let her hide me. Ink blotted near the bottom, smudged by a thumbprint. The girl's heart tripped. She stared until the words blurred, torn between joy and fear. She folded it again quickly, slipping it into the pocket of her cardigan, just as Mara's footsteps approached. All done? Mara asked, carrying a new basket of sheets. Yes, the girl said, straightening too fast. Mara smiled, not noticing. Good helper. The girl felt the paper press against her ribs. Its presence changed the air itself, as though the walls had learned a secret too. By evening, her father returned home. He kissed Mara's cheek distractedly, called from the hallway, Dinner smells good. Then he smiled at his daughter, tired but genuine. Hey, champ, what did you two do today? Laundry, she answered. Productive team, he said, loosening his tie. His eyes were distant, though, and the weight of adult worry sat behind them. He didn't notice the tremor in her voice when she asked, Do you ever miss her? He paused. The plate in his hands wobbled before he set it down. Every day, he said quietly, then added, But we have to keep moving. That phrase sealed the conversation like tape. The girl nodded, chewing the inside of her cheek. Mara's gaze darted between them, her smile thin but practiced. After dinner, she excused herself, saying she'd finish the dishes later. She walked to her room, then sat on the floor beside her bed, turning the note over and over again. The letters seemed to pulse. She imagined her sister, alone, somewhere close, whispering through these lines. Still here. When the house quieted, she crept back to the kitchen where Mara stood rinsing the last glass. Mara, can I ask something? Of course. The girl's voice shook only slightly. When you said she went away, did you mean far? Mara froze mid-motion. Water slid off the glass in her hand, splashing softly in the sink. Why do you ask, love? The girl reached into her pocket and produced the folded paper, holding it tight enough that her knuckles paled. Because she wrote this. Mara blinked hard, lips parting, but no words emerging. She set the glass down slowly. Where did you get that? Behind the washer. Silence spread across the kitchen, heavy as the damp scent rising from the drain. Mara's shoulders lowered. She looked older suddenly, smaller somehow. You shouldn't have found that, she whispered. Why not? It's hers. Mara pressed both palms to the counter. Because that message wasn't meant to hurt you. It didn't. The child's tone wavered. It hurt that you didn't tell me. Mara turned, eyes glistening. Sweetheart, she said softly, stepping nearer. You need to be safe. The girl shook her head. You say that like it's a fence. Safe from who? Mara's hand trembled as she reached out, then dropped it back to her side. From pain, she murmured. From fear. From what your father worried would pull you apart. The girl clutched the note closer. But that's my sister. I'm already apart. Mara's breath caught, her composure cracking. You don't understand. I was trying to protect both of you. From each other? From what seeing her too soon might do. She's fragile. The doctors said. She stopped, pressing her fingers to her temples. I made promises. To her. To him. Her voice weakened. I thought I could keep them all. Tears shimmered at the rim of her eyes, but she didn't wipe them. I wanted you to have calm while she healed. I didn't want you haunted by the sound of machines or the smell of medicine. The girl stared up, suddenly unsure whether to shout or comfort. So she's here? Mara hesitated, then whispered, She's close, closer than you think, but she's not ready for visitors. That's not your choice, the girl said. She wrote to me. Mara covered her mouth, shaking her head slowly, as though the truth itself might crumble if spoken too plainly. Please, the girl said, voice catching. Let me see her. Or at least, tell me she's okay. Mara looked toward the hallway, the direction of the locked door. Her lips parted, trembling. You can't open every door just because it calls your name. Then why does it know mine? The question pierced through the room. Mara closed her eyes. For a heartbeat, everything inside her seemed to sag. The defenses, the secrecy, all of it. Because she whispers it, she said at last. The girl's breath hitched. When? At night, when she dreams. The paper in the girl's fist creased tighter. Then she's alive. Yes, Mara choked. Alive! Healing! Hidden because love makes people foolish sometimes. The girl's shoulders nearly gave way from relief and anger meshed together. Tears welled in her eyes. You could have told me. I wanted to, Mara said, stepping closer until her hand hovered between them. But your father asked me to wait, and I was afraid. Afraid that if I opened that door too soon, she'd lose her calm, and you'd lose yours. For a long moment they stood like that, the note between them, the kitchen humming faintly with the sound of the refrigerator motor. The child's voice came small but sure. Maybe secrets don't keep people safe. They just keep them lonely. Mara's face softened, breaking at the edges. She nodded, a slow surrender. You're right, she said quietly. And I think I've kept everyone lonely long enough. But she didn't move toward the door, not yet. Instead, she reached for the girl's shoulder, holding on as though to steady both of them. Not tonight, she whispered. Soon, I promise. The girl nodded, lips trembling. She couldn't tell if she wanted to cry or shout. She simply held the note like a thread tethering them all to truth. Down the hallway, the locked door stayed silent, but she could feel its heartbeat echo through the floorboards. Steady. Waiting. Alive. The night had turned silver. Moonlight lay across the hallway like spilled milk, soft and revealing. The girl stood barefoot on the rug outside, her father's door, listening to his deep, even breathing. He was asleep. Mara's room, too, was quiet except for the faint rise and fall of her own breath. A soft light glowed beneath the door, the kind that came from a lamp left on for comfort. The girl's heart drummed steady beats, one for every reason she should go back to bed, and one for the only reason she couldn't. The note in her pocket, the secret that made the air in the house thrum. She waited until the next slow exhale from Mara's room, then slipped down the staircase. The banister felt cool against her palm. On the hallway table, beneath an open purse, the moonlight caught a glimmer, the small ring of keys Mara always carried. Her fingers shook as they brushed the metal. A faint jingle seemed too loud in the stillness. She froze, listening. Nothing stirred. The sound of the clock ticked in the kitchen, patient, approving. She closed her hand around the keys and walked toward the locked door. Each step felt heavier with knowing. The door waited for her the way someone waits for a confession, still, sure, inevitable. She tried the first key. It scraped, useless. The second fit halfway, twisting stiffly before halting. Her breath fogged the knob. On the third, a soft click broke the longest silence of her life. The handle turned. Inside the air was warm and faintly sweet, like old perfume mixed with dust. She hesitated in the doorway. Hello? The whisper barely stirred the shadows. A small lamp on a side table glowed dully, casting puddles of amber over the floorboards. The room wasn't big, more long than wide, shaped by the slope of the roof above. It felt halfway between an attic and a secret. The first thing she noticed was the smell. Chalk, paper, the lavender soap her sister had always used. Along one wall hung sheets of drawing paper taped in uneven rows. Crayon lines wandered over them. Stars, animals, the curve of two sisters holding hands. On the desk, under the window, sat a cracked cup filled with pencils worn to stubs, and beside it, a glass of water, only half empty. Each breath she took pulled her nearer to the bed in the far corner. A quilt lay folded back, patterned with clouds and sunbeams stitched in uneven loops. On the pillow, pressed neat and new, rested a thick braid of chestnut hair bound with a faded pink ribbon, her sister's ribbon. For a moment, everything inside her went very still. Her pulse, her fear, her sense of being small. Then she crossed the room in 3 steps and touched the braid. It was soft, impossibly clean, the kind of softness that meant it had been brushed recently. A tremor passed through her hand. She sat on the edge of the bed, the springs giving a low, answering sigh. Her sister wasn't there, not in body. But the room was full of her shape, The open storybook on the floor, the extra blanket half folded, the smell of shampoo clinging to the air. She looked around, heart racing faster now, trying to make sense of a truth that didn't hurt exactly, just startled the world into another color. On the desk sat her own drawing, the one she'd slid under the door. The edges were slightly smudged. In the corner, a fingerprint, maybe hers, maybe someone else's. Beneath the paper, not quite hidden, was another note. She unfolded it. "Almost ready," it said. "Don't be afraid when you hear me dream." She pressed the note against her chest and whispered, "I wasn't afraid." Behind her, a floorboard creaked. The door had opened without sound. Mara stood there, hand to her heart, her robe undone at the collar. Her face was bare, no practiced smile, no shield of calm, just pure human fear and relief tangled together. The girl couldn't tell which of them spoke first. Maybe they both breathed the same word, "Why?" in unison. Mara stepped closer, her feet soundless against the rug. "I told her I could keep you safe," she whispered. She was so fragile after the blow to her head. The doctor said quiet would help, minimal stimulation, no stress. But she refused to leave the house. She begged me. So we made her a room. I thought if you saw her before she recovered, you'd be frightened. And if your father knew, I agreed. She trailed off, shaking her head. He already blamed himself for enough. The girl blinked quickly, throat tight. So she's been here. All the time. Yes, Mara breathed. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Sometimes at night, when the medicine was too strong, she'd call your name. I tried to quiet her so you wouldn't wake. The child looked around again at the neat blankets, the water glass, the open pages of drawings. She's not a ghost, she murmured. No, Mara said, voice trembling. She's life, trying to return to itself. The girl held up the braid. Is this hers or yours? She cut it herself the day she decided she wanted to feel light enough to dream again. She said you both used to braid each other's hair before stories. She wanted you to have this one day. The girl's eyes filled. She remembered. Every day, Mara whispered, even when she couldn't speak clearly. Silence wrapped them, but not the cold kind, more like a blanket too heavy with memories. The girl rose, crossing to stand beside Mara. The woman looked down, waiting for anger, deserving it maybe. Instead, the child reached up and took her hand. You kept her alive, she said. Mara's knees softened. I don't know if it was mercy or mistake. You made it love, the girl answered firmly. For a long time, they stood in that half-lit room, surrounded by drawings, breathing on the walls. From somewhere behind the curtain came a whisper, the faintest stir, perhaps the shift of wind, perhaps the sound of someone sleeping. Mara moved to the bed. She'll wake soon, she whispered. The medicine wears off gentler now. Tomorrow, your father needs to know. The girl nodded, squeezing her hand. I'll help you tell him. Mara gave a sound halfway between a sob and a laugh. You shouldn't have had to be this strong. She taught me. Moonlight deepened, touching their faces with quiet silver. The girl placed the braid carefully back on the quilt and whispered toward it. I found you. For the first time, the room seemed to exhale, not haunted, but relieved. The lamp's glow flickered once, as though releasing a held breath. Mara bent, pressing a trembling kiss to the girl's hair. They stood together in the hush, both crying softly, though neither sound reached beyond those four walls. The secret had changed shape. It was no longer a boundary, just a bridge. When they finally stepped from the room, Mara locked the door again, but this time she left the key inside. The girl noticed but said nothing. They walked down the hall hand in hand, the floor creaking gentle approval beneath them. Behind the closed door, the light dimmed to a calm golden pulse, steady as breathing. The sunrise came quieter than usual, thin light slipping through the curtains as though it, too, did not want to wake the house. The girl sat at the kitchen table, knees pulled close, tracing her fingertip along the wood grain the way she used to trace her sister's palm before sleep. Mara stood by the sink, head bowed, both hands braced against the counter. Neither spoke at first. The smell of oatmeal drifted between them, sweet and tired. When Mara finally turned, her face looked older, eyes swollen from night tears. "You found the room," she said softly. The girl nodded once. "You knew I would." A long sigh left Mara's chest, half defeat, half release. She pulled out a chair opposite her and sat down. It wasn't meant to stay secret forever. Then why did it? The question sounded small but heavy, a child's voice carrying all the weight of an adult one. Mara rubbed the edge of her sleeve between her fingers. "Because I didn't know how to keep you both safe at the same time." The girl watched the steam curl from her bowl. "You keep saying safe like it's something you can hold, but it feels like a lock." Mara's breath shivered. "It was," she admitted, "a lock to stop the world from hurting her again. After the accident, your sister couldn't see straight, couldn't stand loud noise or bright light. Every sound was pain. When your father couldn't bear to watch, he asked me to manage. So I promised him. Quiet, rest, no surprises. I thought that was love." "It wasn't?" The girl's voice softened, cautious now. "It was fear, dressed up as care." Mara's eyes found hers across the table, red-rimmed but steady. "I wanted to give her calm. I forgot that calm isn't the same as living." The girl tilted her head. "And me?" Mara's hands tightened into her lap. "You reminded her of everything she lost. At first, she wanted you near. Then each time you laughed, she cried. The doctor said she needed time. Your father agreed. I just carried out their wishes." A small silence grew between them. The clock ticked its measured judgment. The girl pressed her heel against the chair rung and whispered, "You should have told me." Mara nodded once. "I know." She leaned forward. "I see how wrong it was now. You both needed truth, not walls." The girl breathed slowly. "She remembers me." "She does. Every day. Even when she couldn't speak, she'd draw your face. I kept them on her wall." The child blinked hard to keep hold of tears. "She cut her braid." Mara swallowed. "She said if her hair felt lighter, maybe her heart would too." Neither moved for a long time. The oatmeal cooled. The hum of the refrigerator filled the pause. Then Mara reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out a folded napkin. Inside lay a small silver key. She slid it across the table. "Your father needs to know everything. I don't want more lies in this house. Will you sit with me when I tell him?" The girl touched the key, its ridged metal leaving faint marks on her fingertips. "He'll be angry." "At first." Mara's smile trembled. "But anger is just grief waking up." Footsteps creaked upstairs, the father stirring. Mara pressed her palms together, grounding herself. "He thought I was sparing him too," she whispered. "He hasn't slept a full night since the hospital. We both wanted quiet so badly we stopped hearing each other." The girl traced the edge of the key again. "If she's healing, maybe we can all start hearing again." Mara looked at her, surprised by the calm in her voice. "You sound older than you should." "I feel both," the girl said with a small shrug. "Old from waiting, young from hoping." Mara gave a faint laugh, watery but real. "That's a wise kind of hope." She rose to pour 2 cups of tea, her movements slow, cautious. The sound of the kettle's pour seemed to steady her. "Your sister taught me something you already know," she murmured. "That love isn't clean. It leaves fingerprints. It breaks things when it's trying to hold them steady." The girl glanced toward the hallway where the hidden room waited, now illuminated by soft daylight. "I think love is like glass," she said. "You can see through it, but it can still cut." Mara turned, cup halfway to her lips, expression caught between pride and ache. "And still you reach for it." "Because it's hers," the girl said, meaning her sister's laugh, her father's kindness, even Mara's trembling hands. The first sound of her father's steps came down the hall. He paused at the entryway, eyes narrowing at the tension he didn't understand yet. "Morning," he said quietly. Mara looked at the girl, then back at him. "There's something you should see." Her voice nearly cracked, but the girl reached across the table to squeeze her wrist. It steadied her more than words. They walked together toward the hallway, the girl clutching the key. The smell of soap and sunlight followed them. When they reached the door, Mara turned to her husband. "She deserves to meet her sister," she said simply. He stared between them, confused first, then fearful. "You mean she... here?" Mara nodded. He pressed a hand to his face, breath shaking. "All this time?" Her answer was a whisper. "I thought I was protecting us." The girl slipped the key into his hand. "She's waiting," she said. He looked down at his daughter, then at the door, painted white, ordinary as ever, but suddenly too full of meaning. For the first time, no one pretended anymore. The girl felt Mara's arm brush hers. "See?" Mara whispered almost to herself. "This is what safety should feel like. Not silence, just truth, even when it hurts a little." The girl nodded. "Hurting means it's real." Together, they turned the knob. The morning light widened around them like a held breath finally released. They didn't yet step inside. They only stood together in the threshold, facing what had always been part of them. For the first time since moving here, the house felt balanced again. 3 chairs waiting, 3 hearts open, each learning that love, when spoken out loud, is the bravest kind of safety. The air shifted differently that morning, thinner, brighter, carrying a kind of quiet that didn't ache anymore. The girl sat at the kitchen table again, her familiar spot. But this time, 3 chairs were pulled out, balanced evenly. No empty space, waited at the edge. The hum of the fridge sounded like calm instead of loneliness. Her sister was coming downstairs. She knew it before the footsteps even started, before the small cough or the creak of wood. There was a pattern to that sound. Careful steps, then one pause halfway down, the same as when she had learned to walk years ago. When she appeared at the bottom stair, the room seemed to hold its breath. The older girl looked thinner, her face pale but eyes clear, hair cropped shorter now, soft curls brushing her cheeks. The ribbon from her braid was tied around her wrist. Mara stood behind her, guiding lightly with a hand that trembled. "Easy, love," she whispered. "No rush." The smaller girl didn't move at first. Her chest felt too tight with waiting. Then her sister smiled, a shy thing, small but true. That was all it took. The younger girl ran forward and stopped just short, unsure whether to hug or cry. The older one reached out first. Their hands met palm to palm, the same way they used to promise secrets at night. The warmth was real. It wasn't a dream. "You're really here," the younger murmured. "I never left," her sister said, voice rough from disuse but steady. "Just stayed quiet too long." Mara turned away slightly, pressing a hand to her lips. The girl saw her shoulders shake, not from sorrow now, but from release. Their father entered then, slow steps heavy with awe. He froze when he saw the older girl, eyes wide, breath catching like someone stepping back in time. He crossed to her carefully and cupped her cheek, thumb trembling. "You scared me half to death," he whispered. "I scared myself," she said. He let out a ragged laugh that ended in a sob. Mara hovered beside him, uncertain whether to reach for him or not. The little girl watched them all, each trying to find a shape that fit this new truth. Finally, her father drew a long, uneven breath. "We do this together now," he said softly. "No more locked doors." They sat down at the table, 4 plates this time. The sunlight scattered across the dishes, making ordinary things glow. The younger girl buttered toast for her sister, careful not to tear the bread. Her sister laughed quietly. "You're more patient than I remember." "You're more awake," came the reply. "I guess we both learned something," the older said, sipping warm tea. It trembled slightly in her hand, but she didn't hide it. Mara watched her, then reached for the cup. "Here, let me—" "I can," the older said gently, holding it steady. Their eyes met. A small nod passed between them. Gratitude, without words. The younger girl felt the room settle. No grand speech, no dramatic forgiveness, just small proof that kindness could rebuild what fear had cracked. By mid-morning, laughter slipped naturally through the house again. The older sister traced the rim of her plate thoughtfully. I dreamed this, she said. Us, here, the same morning light. Mara smiled, with tears still brimming. Then it was waiting for you to wake. The little girl reached for the jam jar, twisting the lid. I thought the door remembered you, she said softly. Maybe it did. Her sister squeezed her hand. Doors remember, but so do hearts. Her father leaned back, watching them with a quiet the house hadn't known for months. Feels like a beginning, he murmured. The little girl nodded. A safe one. She looked towards Mara, who met her eyes with a half-smile, faint and grateful. Outside, a breeze stirred the curtains. The scent of lilac drifted through the window that had once been kept closed. The older sister glanced toward it, breathing deeply. I miss spring. It waited, the younger said, like everyone. Mara rose to refill the kettle. Her movements held new ease now. When she turned, she addressed both children, not with authority, but belonging. You two will always have this space. It's not perfect, but it's honest. The older sister gave a playful arch of an eyebrow. Can we draw on the walls? Her father smiled, the first unguarded one in months. Maybe start with paper again. They laughed, a small collective sound that filled the corners of the house. The younger sister noticed the way light hit the newly added chair. It no longer looked empty, but alive. Later, when the dishes were stacked and the adults moved toward the garden to talk, the two girls stayed behind at the table, crayons scattered between them. The younger drew wide skies. The older added small suns in the corners. I think she was lonely too, the little one said, handing over a blue crayon. Mara, I mean. She was, the older agreed. She tried to build safety out of silence, but silence is heavy to live in. The little girl thought before replying, We'll make it lighter. Side by side, they filled the paper with color until the shapes swirled together. Two figures under a bright yellow roof, a third smaller form holding out a hand, all surrounded by soft green hills. When they finished, the older sister folded the paper carefully, smiling at her. You still draw hearts in the corners. They mean love. Then maybe we can hang this one right above the table, the older said. The younger nodded, grinning. So nobody forgets which chair goes where. Their father re-entered then, wiping his hands on a towel, stopping to watch them draw. He didn't interrupt. He only looked around the kitchen, the sunlight, the laughter, the faint clatter of normal life returning, and breathed out the kind of sigh that comes after a long, hard winter. In that moment, the younger girl understood something simple but huge. Some secrets were built out of care, not cruelty. And forgiveness didn't erase what had happened. It gave it meaning. She looked up, meeting the eyes of each person at the table. So, we can stay here now, she said quietly, not as a wish, but as truth. Mara's smile quivered. Her father reached to rest a hand on each daughter's shoulder. The older sister leaned close and whispered, Promise? The younger smiled. Promise. The word folded the morning closed like a ribbon knotted just right. Secure, not tight. The kitchen glowed with late morning light, spilling over plates and pencils. The sisters sat side by side again, drawing without speaking. One sketched flowers, the other traced a small sun. The silence now felt safe, not secret. Their father leaned in the doorway, arms folded loosely, eyes soft. Mara stood by the window, folding a clean dish towel, her movements slower and calmer. Every sound, the ticking clock, the chirp of a sparrow outside, threaded into something the house had been missing for months. Peace that didn't hide. The little girl looked at her drawing, two sisters under a golden roof, their hands touching, and whispered the words that had once been a plea. You need to be safe, and I need my sister. She said it more as a memory than a demand. Her sister smiled, resting her chin on one hand. You got both, she said quietly. Not how I thought, the younger replied, eyes tracing the edge of the page. But maybe better. Mara turned from the window. Better because the truth finally has space. The girl nodded. And because the door isn't afraid anymore. Her father came closer, pulling up a chair. It creaked under his weight, an ordinary sound that made them all laugh a little. He reached across the table, brushing a stray crayon aside. I used to think keeping pain away was the same as keeping love safe, he said. Maybe they live in the same room. Her sister looked at him, eyes bright. You don't have to lock it anymore. I won't, he promised. And for once, everyone believed him. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain. The little girl thought it smelled like renewal. She slid her finished picture toward the center of the table. Her sister added their names in looping script beneath it. Mara bent to look closer, her tear catching the light before it fell. Think we can hang it over the stove? The father asked. Over the table, the younger said, so we can see it every morning. They did. With a single strip of tape, the paper joined the wall, a small, imperfect masterpiece that meant everything. The younger sister studied it once more and whispered, Family means no locked doors. Mara exhaled slowly, and learning how to trust the sound of laughter again. Her father placed his hands over both girls. We'll keep listening, he said. The light grew warmer across the room, brushing every face in gold. The sisters reached for their crayons again, drawing small hearts in each corner of the page. When they finished, the air felt full, soft, whole, certain. Love didn't erase the past. It painted over it in brighter color. The camera of the mind moved back, the chairs balanced, the table steady, shadows short and forgiving. The old door gave a faint sigh down the hall, no longer guarding anything, just resting. Before the story closed, the girl looked toward the viewer, her voice clear yet tender. Tell me, she said, when have love and safety felt like the same thing, or two halves of one promise? A pause. Then her small smile. If this story stayed with you, subscribe for more. We're still learning what family means.